This is all about you, man, and your journey in music and how you got to where you are now.
Cool. Remind me your name?
Adam,
Adam. That's right. Good to see you, Adam.
good to see you, Seth. I
Where
appreciate it again.
where you at, buddy?
Actually, my family and I just moved to Nashville about less than a month ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
whereabouts are you?
Well, actually, right now I'm down in Jacksonville Beach, Florida.
Okay.
Yeah, I played a show down here on this past weekend, and my family, we're all down here hanging. We had a little music camp. My father and uncle and aunt, they do a little music camp down here. So yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
that's amazing. So you're
yeah.
actually able to play live in front of human beings? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, it hadn't been
What a
it hadn't,
concept.
it hadn't been much of that. It's been maybe six or seven that I've done through the past year. So yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty bizarre. But it was obviously very wonderful to play and yeah, feel the air in the room. It's cool.
That is awesome. That is,
Yeah,
I'm so happy that you're able to get in front of people, and
yeah,
hopefully sooner than later it'll continue on.
yeah.
I did see a lot of shows being and tours being booked for October, November, so
Hmm.
fingers
Yeah,
crossed that
yeah,
all.
man. It's starting to come. It's starting to come a little bit. I mean, it's not going to really be. I don't think it's going to be swinging really till next year as far as actual touring goes. But
Sure.
at least we're able to play a little bit. That's
Yeah,
cool.
at
Yeah,
least yeah, you could see that light down there a little bit
yeah. Mhm.
opening up.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, so the part of Florida you're in now, is that where you were born and raised?
No, I was raised in North Carolina,
Okay.
outside of Elon College. Is a little town called, which is sure you have not been there. It's called Altamahaw, Ossipee, North Carolina, which is
Not.
I know, bro.
I've only
It's
been to South Carolina, to be honest, in the Carolinas.
okay, okay, all right. I won't hold that against you. And
Yeah.
I grew up. It's a little town right in the middle of the state, the
Okay.
Piedmont area they call it. I grew up. I grew up on a log house and like a communal living situation with my family and another family.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was a different way to grow up, and as I mentioned, my parents are both musicians, so I was kind of born into this.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what age were you playing music, and what did mom and dad play? Like what instruments were they playing?
Well, my mother plays violin. My father plays pretty much everything with strings on it. But he's a cellist mainly, and
Okay.
guitarist and composer, pianist. My sister, she plays violin, but we grew up playing. Um, it's called Suzuki method. I don't know if you ever heard of this, but
I've heard the name,
yeah,
but please explain because
yeah. It's just it's a Dr. Suzuki was this Japanese teacher, music teacher, and it's basically you learn by ear training instead of being kind
oh,
of tethered to the
reading
notes on the
notes.
page. Yeah. So it's a little different way, and then you start to kind of pepper in sight reading later,
Hmm.
which
I
I
feel
think
like
is
that might help you a bit more when it comes to music. I mean, I don't know personally, but not being so like, okay, I need to look at this piece of paper to know that I'm supposed to be playing an E here, whereas you can just hear it already and you're already kind of trained that way. I feel like, I don't know,
yeah.
might be beneficial to you.
It served me well, especially especially because I'm doing music by feel. I'm
Uh-huh.
doing blues music, soul music, and it's not really written on the page. So I think that has served me well. It has been somewhat of a limitation in that I wish I had a little bit more knowledge and background with writing notes out and with that side of it. Sometimes the Suzuki students have a hard time getting back into sight reading because they're so trained to hear it.
Sure.
So it's kind of a
Yeah.
double-edged sword, but I'll take this side of the sword. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I've had conversations with other artists that will be to the point like where their parents will throw them in piano lessons at an early age, and they were only learning the songs by ear, and they'd
Yeah.
kind of fake it, and then
Yeah.
like the teacher will put the wrong sheet music in front of them and be like, and they're playing the same song they should be playing. They're like,
Yeah, right.
I knew you couldn't read that.
Oh yeah, there's some of that for sure. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. So born into this whole industry, really.
Mhm.
You said, well, you first you picked up cello? That was the first instrument you learned?
Yeah, that was the first
Okay.
instrument I picked up was cello, and I played it from about age 4 until 16,
Wow.
and so it was a good little run. But you know, it wasn't that my parents. I mean, obviously they're teachers, so they're going to get me in this program. And it wasn't that it was taught really with an iron fist. It was just it wasn't something that I really discovered. Like it wasn't for whatever reason I didn't have that passion for it. I enjoyed it
Hmm.
and I learned a lot from it. I'm really glad that I have those tools as I navigate my musical world now. But it wasn't until I discovered the guitar in college that that was like something that I that I found, you know.
Right. It
Yeah,
was yours.
this was something that I yeah, and I just went, you know, completely bananas.
So
Yeah.
that didn't even happen until you're in college.
Yeah. No.
Wow. So were you doing like school orchestra and all of that leading up into college?
Um, it was not school orchestras. I just did like private lessons and with my folks, and we would do these, you know, workshops and institutes, and I would do recitals every now and then. And I just kind of dropped out of it, honestly. I around the age of 16,
Hmm.
music wasn't in my life. I was sports fanatic. I was into tennis and into soccer and being a, you know, idiot and
Degenerate
yeah,
teenager.
exactly. Misfit teenager, and then I grew up all along like I would like to paint. I would do some drawings and things like that. So as I was trying to come up with some uh, reason to go to college,
Hmm.
um, I knew it wasn't music. I'd say, well, man, I'll be an art major, and so that got me to East Carolina University to do art. And then once I was there, I started meeting people who were into
Music.
electric blues. They were listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan and Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix. And then I started messing around with the guitar.
Okay. So you were going to East Carolina State University?
East Carolina
Oh,
University.
East
Yeah.
Carolina University. That's
Mhm.
for Sandra Bullock alumni.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, she's a pirate. She's a pirate. Yeah, that's right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there were you. Obviously, you could play music. So when you pick up guitar, was that relatively easy for you to start learning?
Probably more maybe some more than other people trying because I my fingers had been on strings my whole life. So
Sure.
um, in that regard, yes. Um, but man, I just did a lot of it. I sat in my dorm room and I just didn't go to class, and I just played along with blues albums. And I think it was a big part of it was the stark contrast between classical music, which is obviously beautiful and soulful and rich and
Sure.
all this stuff. But there was something about the blues stuff that was it was so raw and so like it was so emotional. Like I could bend a string, you know,
Mm.
and it was simple. It wasn't complex. It was so real. It captured me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so were you were playing along to the records? When do you start writing your own songs?
Well, that really didn't come till later. I was just at that point. I was just man. I was really just barely getting going in college. I did have a little band
Okay.
called Soul Food. That was. I mean, we were just doing Stevie Ray Vaughan, Hendrix covers
Okay.
very badly.
Sure. And just in like what a garage or
Yeah, we would
around
jam in a
something.
garage, and we had. I remember we did have one my first little show there. Actually, there's a story about my very first show with that band in my book. Your van is on fire. That actually the title,
Yeah.
Your van is on fire, is actually about
The
the
first
very
show.
first gig I ever had
Oh, interesting.
in a house concert. Yeah, it was a
Oh
house.
my oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Okay.
man, it was a been a crazy journey. So, but that really ignited, pardon the pun, but it ignited this this I knew it was starting to burn. Like I knew I wanted to get more into this, and I wanted to drop out of college because I wasn't into it. Uh,
Mhm.
this became my education, and I knew I wanted to surround myself with people who took it more seriously. You know,
Sure.
yeah.
And did you kind of within that, were you able to kind of find your tribe of people, like that band that you referenced as the title of your book? Was that something that you guys stayed together for a while, or like?
No, not really. I ended up moving to Jacksonville, Florida. Oddly enough, that's where I am right now, where my uncle lived, and he is a jazz bass player, professional jazz bass player, and he also had a radio show down here called.
Okay.
We had two of them. One was called the After Hours Cafe, which was a strictly blues program, and then he had a
Hmm.
drive time talk radio show. So he's always been a good influence for me, kind of uh, kind of outside of my father's and my mother's beautiful scope.
Sure.
So he would send me tapes of blues programs. I mean, it would we listen. I mean, it was like T-Bone Walker and Gatemouth and Texas stuff to Chicago Lightning and up to Chicago to Muddy and all this stuff and the Piedmont stuff too. So I knew he was in the know with it shit. So
Right.
I moved here
Okay.
and started messing around playing in reggae bands, and I played in a Grateful Dead cover band, and then I had my own little group I was trying, and then that little chapter was seemed to be somewhat of a dead end inspirationally too. And then I said, okay, I need to go to a music city, and that's when I moved to Austin, Texas.
Okay. So you moved to Austin,
Yeah,
and then did you form? Is that when you kind of got your solo project off the ground, or the
yeah.
Seth Walker band?
It took a minute. I moved there in 1995, and I
Okay.
was still, man, still a greenhorn. I mean, it took me a couple years of getting my ass handed to me at blues jams and meeting people, learning. I mean, I was deep diving into traditional Texas blues out there. And it wasn't until around 1996 or 1997 where I started doing my own gigs under my own name. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. I was just
And
a backup guy. I was like, I played bass in a couple bands and I learned how to swing. I was really a student.
uh-huh.
I mean, obviously, you're always a student in this music stuff and life, but um, that afforded me. There was a beautiful community of like-minded people there. That it was an old Austin before. I don't know if you've been to Austin lately, but it's kind of blown up. You know,
Oh yeah. Yeah, I have actually.
this was a little college town. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it was a real tribal little community of musicians, and we stuck together and cut our teeth together. It was cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What was it like going from, kind of side band member guy to now you're the front and center?
Hmm. Um, I guess I mean it took a little change, but I've always been, you know, I don't know. I guess I don't follow very well, I always had a little idea of having my own vision with it, even when I didn't really know what that vision was.
Sure.
I knew I wanted to start something on my own, and if you remember around that time, there was like a neo swing. It was like remember there was this movie called The Swingers, and there's all these
Yeah.
jump
Yeah.
blues bands were playing, and I was just playing blues music that swung, and
Okay.
it wasn't like a anything that I had some grand scheme plan. I'm not smart enough for that, and all of a sudden these swing dancers started coming out to my shows to dance, and it afforded me. I was like, I started getting gigs, just playing covers, and that really got the ball rolling for me, and it kind of springboarded me into making my first album in 1997. I had the money to do it, and things
Oh,
like
wow.
that.
Just based off playing so much and being able to kind of bank that money.
Yeah, I mean, and I got a super sweet deal on the thing. It was at Willie Nelson's studio called Perpetual Studios out in Spiceville.
Wow.
And I just met some very generous, awesome veterans that saw my potential and they gave me a shot to
That's
record.
amazing.
Yeah.
And so then that was When It Rains, It Pours.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
1997. And those are original songs, but they're just, just basically rip-offs of Louis Jordan and BB King and things like that. But it was a step I
Well,
needed.
that's kind of what every song is, though, right? If you really went back, you're
It's
like,
true. Good point. Touche. Yeah, nothing much has changed, but in those days I was really, just really, um, I didn't even know that my voice was an instrument. I was just, I like play guitar and I like, and so I just kind of sang through them. I didn't really think of it. I didn't even really know how to emote, honestly, through my voice. It wasn't
Mhm.
until much later where I discovered that that was actually probably my number one instrument to express myself.
When do you remember that moment that happened, that you kind of put that clicked?
Yeah, it was many years later. Actually, it was about a decade later. Honestly, I'd done
Oh,
four
wow.
albums since that. Um, no, it wasn't that I wasn't in tune with my voice, or
Sure.
I just didn't understand. I hadn't got to know it yet, really. And
Mhm.
I did a record in 2006. It's a self-titled record. It's actually the first album that Kevin Calabro, who hooked us up, um, he signed me to his label, Hyena Records, and
Oh, okay.
that was my self-titled album, and it was more of a return to the blues because in my couple 2 or 3 albums before that, I was still venturing off, and I was kind of doing some folk stuff, and I was kind of trying to do some rock and roll, and I was really trying to see what worked for me. And when I
Yeah.
returned to this blues soul sound, um, my voice like kind of awoken, if you will.
Right.
And I was like, oh, this is more my channel. I got really eaten up with Wilco. I saw Wilco one time
Oh.
and I was like, I want to be Jeff Tweedy. And I'm like,
Right.
I'm not Jeff Tweedy. Like, I love Jeff Tweedy, but that's not my channel.
I've
And
heard that before, though. Like, Wilco's amazing, and just
yeah,
I've heard that funny thing. That's funny that you said that. Like, I've heard a lot of musicians be like, "I wish I was Jeff Tweedy."
yeah, I know. And I was like, and then I would try to be Jeff Tweedy, and I was like, this does not feel right. I think I'll leave that up to Jeff Tweedy to be Jeff Tweedy.
With what the record that you're after the self-titled record, that you said that was kind of where you found your voice.
Yeah,
Were you still in Austin at the time, or had you moved around quite a bit prior to that, or
I was,
like?
I was in Austin all those years from
Oh, wow.
1995 to 2008. But when I did that self-titled record, I started to. I was working with a drummer, Mark Hayes, um, and he was the first guy to really. He just reminded me, or just actually pointed out um, about the lyrics, like to really pay attention to the lyrics and start to
Mhm.
listen to songwriters. I mean, I listened to some growing up. I mean, I would listen to Willie Nelson growing up, but I didn't, I wasn't a student of the game yet. Um, and so I started diving into people like Nick Lowe and John Hyatt and Guy Clark and Townes Van Zandt and of course Tom Waits and Bob Dylan. And and then I was like, these bells started to go off. Like, oh, okay, I want to try to meld this blues dirt that I have with some songwriting. So that's when I started nosing around in Nashville, and then
Oh, okay.
I met some songwriters in Nashville that Delbert McClinton, this guy Gary Nicholson, and that's when I decided to make the move to Nashville.
Okay. And it was right at that self-titled, right after you had put out that self-titled record.
Right after that. So 2008 is when I made the move.
Were you touring on those 4 previous records, or were you kind of still staying local there
I
in
was just staying
Austin?
around Texas. I
Okay.
do a few little things around Houston and Dallas. I mean, hell, you could probably tour. You could tour and never leave Texas if you wanted to.
I know.
A lot of
I
people
dri-
do. A lot of people do.
it's massive, man.
It's its own thing. But yeah, I wasn't. When the self-titled record came out, and I hooked up with Kevin and Hyena. I got my first booking agent, and then I just started to do some tours. So, and then the Nashville just seemed like a good change to do because I was kind of in a little bit of a velvet rut.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Well, then you moved to Nashville, you put out Leap of Faith, and that record does fantastic for you, right? I mean, it's like the second number 2 on the Billboard charts in the blues
Yeah, it did.
category. So, like,
Hmm.
talk to me about that record. What was, aside from, you kind of found, you said you found your voice in that self-titled record.
Hmm.
You obviously were able to take that voice and go further than you had gone prior with
Yeah.
that record. What was different on that?
Well, I was working with a songwriting and producer, this guy named Gary Nicholson I mentioned before, and so he very experienced. I mean, like Grammy award winning guy, and he's from Texas, so we had a Texas blues language that we could speak together.
Okay.
But he's a unbelievably accomplished lyricist. I mean, his discography is insane. Um, but so I was honestly, man, I was a little. I mean, I was a kid. I was so green coming to this situation. I I learned a lot, and I also learned a lot about what I what didn't suit me. It was another Jeff Tweedy lesson. um, because I found myself in this situation where um, I was collaborating a lot, and I was, testing my songwriting boundaries, and some of the songs would kind of lean a little bit more towards something that wasn't what I was hearing, what I was feeling, but I
Hmm.
was still growing. So I learned a lot in that way, but the record itself came out so good, uh, and it really helped me. Um, it helped me kind of internalize the next one,
Hmm.
the next step for me. It was a pretty produced record,
Okay.
honestly.
And were
Yeah,
you, with the success of it, were you able to, had you toured at that point? I mean, you made this move to Nashville, and like you put this rad record together and it does really well. What are you seeing as far as like like, are your shows getting bigger? Are you playing out a whole lot, or?
yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole thing has been a really slow, slow climb. There hasn't been any crazy spikes. I mean, we've had the Billboard things have been wonderful,
Uh-huh.
and
You had a couple records on the Billboard
yeah, a
charts.
couple of them. Are You Open did really well too, but um, it's in this type of music, in this
Uh-huh.
Americana blues soul. It's there's not a whole lot of spikes in it.
Sure.
It's like, and that's what's so beautiful about it because it has it'll last you a lifetime. It's a
Yeah, it has
your
longevity,
longevity.
right?
Your fans are not fly by nighters. I mean, I've had some of the same fans. They've been with me for every album, 11 albums worth of music.
I was just gonna say, I mean, there's not many artists that can say they put out 11 records and they're still doing it to this day. You know what I mean? It's like, especially in the world of how quickly music is,
Mm,
TikTok is putting a song up and it's popular for, 6 minutes while 10 million people do a dance move to it and then it goes away. And it's like I don't know where, it's an
I know
interesting position we're in here
it is.
with the industry is, because there's guys like you that have, you said you've never had this huge spike. I mean, but you've had some major success.
Yeah, it's
11 records. You've been on the Billboard charts at least twice, two, three
toured all over the
times,
world. I've
toured the
toured all over
world.
the world.
You
Yeah.
get to do what you love, and you have a fan base that loves you and will follow you every step of the way, is where
Yes.
these kids that are putting out one hit might get a bunch of recognition for 5 minutes, and then, may never even put out a full record. It might be
I know,
three
dude.
songs.
I
You know
know.
what I mean? Two
It's a,
songs.
it's a whole other thing these days, And I am thankful that you know I started back then. I can't imagine trying to come into this right now.
Yeah, it's an
So
interesting
noisy.
time.
It's very.
Well, okay, so I know you have a book that you just put out. I want to talk to you about the book, but right before that, so you put a record out in 2019. You're talking about, called Are You Open?
Yeah.
Which is interesting because of the title. When it comes into like 2020 is pretty much closed.
Yeah.
You're
I
right.
never thought about that.
Like, so you have this record that comes out. Does it come out in the middle of the year, towards the end of the year? And how did COVID kind of affect your, aside from now you're stuck inside, you got to worry about family and sickness. I'm talking just
Yeah.
on a music songwriting, livelihood basis. Like,
Yeah.
how did that affect you directly?
Well, the record came out in February of 2019. So I had
Okay.
basically a whole
Whole
year
year.
to tour it and promote it. And it did,
Okay.
so that was a nice long cycle, and I got to tour it and really get to internalize the songs and perform them. Um, but as COVID hit, um, yeah, I mean, was it March of 2020?
Yeah.
Everything stopped, and I had been, as we've spoken this whole podcast about, the all the touring and all the albums, and I felt like I was on this, like, I didn't realize what kind of a flaming hamster wheel of doom I was on. I was just like touring like insane, and
Right.
it's something that it's like some kind of innate thing that you learn. It's like you just got to go. You just have to go do the deal. You got to go. You got to drive those 600 miles. You got to go do it. And I just never. I needed this. I needed this break.
Mm-hmm.
To you know
Like reset
re,
almost. I mean,
re, re, reset it, man. And um, it gets kinetic. And so that's when I started. Obviously, I didn't have any gigs, so I just started, looking at some of my journals and some little poetry that I'd done before, but not much. And then I just started. Going. I just found this new muse, and it really has inspired me creatively as I get back into music now. I'm working on a new album now that's coming out beginning of next year. The
amazing.
book has kind of has realigned me with my creativity, um, which has been nice.
Yeah, I can't wait to read it, man. I'm huge into that's why I wanted to start this podcast, because I'm just
Oh,
like such a nerd for like memoirs and
yeah.
people's bios, and that's always like what I've always read. Like, I don't really read a whole lot of like fiction. It's always just like
Hmm.
people's life stories, because it
Yeah,
just
I'm the same
fascinates
way.
me.
Mhm. Totally.
So the fact that you wrote this, like, you said it's a collection of poetry too, but is it more or less, or just like the story of Seth Walker and your life? Is that essentially?
I mean, essentially, it's a memoir essentially, but they're broken. It's very short essays,
Okay.
and they're like, a lot of them are. I mean, there's a lot tales of a lot of gigs, gone terribly wrong, which are always more fun to hear about than the ones
Right.
that are right. And some essays about where I grew up in that communal log house, and then there's a section about all of the people that's influenced me, all of the guys I've opened up for, Alan Toussaint, Dr. John, Johnny Winter, all these people who have shaped me, and I wrote little, just like vignettes about my kind of brush with them, um, and and then there's some poetry, and there's some of my artwork in there, which I've never really shared that much with my fans. So it's kind of a hybrid book.
That's amazing. It's awesome. I can't wait to check it out. Just on where you find it on your website or
Yeah.
Amazon or
Yeah,
something.
it's on Amazon, of course, and but go to my website. Yeah,
Hard
I'll get
copies.
yeah,
Is that
some more money. Yeah.
That's awesome. I can't wait. I'm gonna definitely check it out because when I saw that you had written a book, I was like, "This is right up my alley." I just tend to find stuff on like Audible and listen to just memoirs of people. And I'm
Yeah.
currently listening to Travis Barker from Blink's memoir. I mean,
Oh,
just it does. I mean, I'm like all over the spectrum. It doesn't really matter
cool.
because
Cool.
I'm just so fascinated by people's stories and like they always say, you know, it's just like how you'll hear one person's story and then how it kind of connects and intertwines, and they might have run into the same person at one point, and like there's the edge. I can just get so into it.
Yeah,
It's so
it's
fascinating to
really cool.
me.
And it's much stranger than fiction always.
Oh yeah,
I did do an Audible version too that I
you
narrate.
did.
Yeah, I'd narrate it. So if you want to listen to it, you can do that too.
Oh, I'm doing that for sure. That's my next Audible purchase.
Okay.
I love it. Cool,
Cool.
dude. Thank you so much, Seth. I really appreciate talking with you today. Thank
Yeah,
you
my
so
pleasure.
much.
I'll catch you when I'm in Nashville next time.
Oh, please do. You need
Yeah.
to swing by. I have one more question though before I
Yeah.
let you go.
Mhm.
I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Aspiring artist. Um, well, I guess it would be kind of like we talked about this slow is like a slow build, a slow grind that will last you longer, and also just um, it the business is so it's so strange and so it yanks you around so much and physically, emotionally, it's like it's a puzzle, and I think if you can bend more than be rigid, if you can bend, they say bend and you shall be straight. Just across the board, I think it'll serve you longer because if you try to control it and try to tighten it, you're gonna snap.